Everyone, thanks so much for joining me today. This is Rowe Leathers, one of the senior coaches here at American Military University and American Public University. Today is part 3 of our series. Today's topic is bouncing back from being laid off. We have a lot to uncover today, so we're going to dive in. I want to be respectful of your time. So let's review our agenda rather quickly. First thing that we're going to address about bouncing back is rebuilding your self-confidence. When you are laid off, it can be overwhelming as far as trying to figure out what has happened and what your next step should be. So we're going to take a look at how we can reposition our frame our mindset to be productive and moving on to the next step. We are going to be discussing how you can tap into your network of professional connections. And if you don't know what that is at this moment, or if you're saying that you don't have one, you do. If you've had a career, you have a network. So we're going to clarify how to identify who those people are. Third is we're going to assess your career ecosystem. We're going to figure out what the structure is of your industry and those around you, and how your network is built into that framework. We're going to assess and remind you of your professional value. If you've spent years honing in and applying your knowledge and skills to a particular role, there's value in that. And we're going to go through a process where we're going to remind you what that is and try to figure out where in your ecosystem your expertise will be valued, so that we'll uncover where opportunities may be. And we're also going to talk about adjusting your personal brand. If you are moving away from a specific role and pivoting into something new, we want to make sure that your new professional brand is going to be seen and perceived as the new area where you are going to be applying your knowledge. And then we're going to talk about how to create your job search and this journey that you're going to be traveling on, right? And then we're going to touch on how to maintain balance, because being laid off, trying to figure out what the next steps are and what are the tools around you, who's around you that can be a support system. All that can be overwhelming. And we're going to go through step by step and trying to figure out how you can structure that so that you can actually recognize what is what and where is where. Okay. And then if you have talents or hobbies, we're going to talk about how side gigs and short-term income options exist for you. And then we'll just recap with reminders, and then we'll hit questions and comments. So let's dive right on in. Okay, so rebuilding self-confidence. No one is going to argue. If you've ever been laid off, we know how unstabilizing that idea is. And if it's something that we were not prepared for, it comes to a shock to us. We start to panic, and we can't tell from left and right and up and down. And so we're here to say, we got you, okay? Let's figure out how to structure what you are actually seeing and clarify what is going to be useful for you and where those resources and support systems are, okay? And so it's very important to stay positive when you are in this situation. Panicking isn't going to do us any good. And yes, we can take some time and just to get that nervous energy out. But once we are ready to move on and try to figure out our next steps, positive mindset is going to be a crucial component of this process. Okay. We're going to reframe the layoff as an opportunity. And I know that sounds a little, it sounds like an oxymoron. How can a layoff be an opportunity? Well, what it does is it forces you to assess your situation. It forces you to assess what you're capable of, what your strengths are, and what your skills are, and your qualifications. And then it forces you to have to find where you can find your next opportunity. So in a way, this for some, and you have heard stories before where people say, oh, that layoff or losing my job was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me because it really shook me and made me reassess the journey I was on as in regards to my career. So hopefully this is going to have the same outcome for you, okay? And then rebuilding your self-confidence is a daily habit that we have to learn. You know, just because we tell ourselves today that we're going to be positive isn't going to carry us all the way through this process. We have to remind ourselves that this is an opportunity, and this is a daily step that we have to remind ourselves that this is something that we are working on and that we're making things happen. So we're going to talk about keeping your skills sharp, engage in skill building activities, whether that's connecting or staying connected with your colleagues, continuing to read about your industry and what's happening in the workplace. If you are a federal employee or a former federal employee, that's staying on top of what's happening on what decisions are being made. Because if this is your industry, you have to stay in the know. You still have to keep up with what's happening. So we can't just shut down. Right? And then where volunteer work is one way that you can keep your confidence up. And I know some would probably are saying volunteer work, how can I even think about volunteering when I don't have a paycheck coming in? Volunteering is a wonderful way to keep the resume gaps closed because you are working. It doesn't necessarily have to be a paid opportunity. If you're volunteering, you're at work, and that can keep your gaps on your resume closed because this is what takes the place of a paid employment, volunteer work. And then if you are volunteering your time and your talent, you're actually still keeping your skills sharpened and meeting new people and building a network and keeping your network growing is very important in this process. All right, so let's talk about tapping into your network, your professional connections, right? We're going to talk about reconnecting and strengthening those relationships. But some of you are probably saying, I don't have a network. I focused on my job and that's all I did. Well, let me tell you, if you have spent years working and you worked in an organization where there were other people, you have a network. That is your network. Your network is everyone in your professional circle. That is a colleague that worked in the desk next to you. That's your boss. That is the larger department in the organization that you worked in. And then those professional connections that you've made on LinkedIn. And if you're not on LinkedIn, we're going to talk about that as well, because we want to make sure that you understand the structure of a network, right? So staying connected with your existing colleagues, informal conversations with them, staying in touch with them, connecting with them on LinkedIn, email, text messages, those are the ways that you can stay connected with the people in your network. And if you belong to an alumni group, now is a great time to get active, especially and as well as industry associations. If your industry is experiencing a shakeup, you know that the industry associations are going to address this, and they may have resources and ideas for you. So it's a good time to tap into that and become engaged. Okay. All right, let's talk about LinkedIn and professional platforms. LinkedIn is probably or is the only social media that I expect everyone to have. If you are a professional, unless you are in an industry that is very discreet, there's really no reason for you not to have a LinkedIn profile, because it's a harder conversation to have to explain to other professionals why you're not on LinkedIn. It makes it sound like you're not in touch with technology or out of touch with technology. Okay. So updating or creating a LinkedIn profile is important. All right. LinkedIn is where you can share your industry insights and learn from other experts. So when I say create a LinkedIn profile. It's not just creating a profile and then letting it be. It's visiting that website and being active on the platform. What does that mean? If you're saying, well, I don't know what to share with these people, look, if you are reading articles about your industry that you have found helpful, likely your colleagues will find them helpful as well. So take the opportunity to keep your mind sharp and stay on top of what's happening in your industry, and then share those articles on LinkedIn. The goal is for you to be active, for people to continue to see you. And hopefully, when you share enough information on a topic, they start to connect you as an expert in that area. Okay? We'll talk about a little bit more about that when we talk about personal branding. And a network is also very valuable in your job search process. When you're on LinkedIn, you are connected with other people who are working. And so when they know that you are seeking a job in your specific area of expertise, they may reach out to you and say, hey, my company is looking or filling a spot that sounds exactly what you are, what you're an expert in, what you did in your previous role. Take a look. And we've heard stories before where people say, I heard about my job through a referral. And even when you see those jobs posted on message boards, oftentimes internal referrals have already been made. And sometimes, and this is probably the reason you don't get any responses back, sometimes those spots are they actually have people in mind already, and it's just by policy or requirement that they have to post that position. We've all been there where we said, well, I never heard anything back. I applied, and then the posting was only up for 3 days, and then they took it down, and I have no idea what happened. That is probably what happened. They were required to post it, but they already had internal candidates or referred candidates that they had in mind. So you want to be one of those people. You want to stay connected to people that, especially those who are in your industries, are in positions to refer you. So keep your connections open and let them know that you are looking for a new position. And if they hear anything, if they hear anything that might be a match to you, please let you know. Okay. If we have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I want to make sure that we address any questions that you have that maybe other people are also wanting to know about. So drop them below, and my colleague Stacy will let me know if there is a question. Okay. All right. So next up is finding your value within your career ecosystem. What is a career ecosystem? And many of you are probably saying, I don't even have a career ecosystem. If you've had a job and if you've had a career, you have a career ecosystem. And your career ecosystem is every role outside of yours. So that could be the person across the aisle from you sitting at their desk or the next cubicle. This is your managers, this is your entire team, your department, your organization. And then, of course, outside of your organization, you have the rest of your career ecosystem, which is customers, vendors, suppliers, manufacturers, regulatory agencies, if they existed for your industry. That is your career ecosystem. A career ecosystem is the structure around your job where everybody is working together, speaking the same language, it's the same mission to bring the same product or service to market. So the person across from you is working on their portion that's a little bit different from yours, but you're all working together to come together to create the service or product that you are providing to your customers. So that your entire ecosystem is working together using the same type of terminology and knowledge, just coming from different perspectives. And you've all heard before about how a manufacturer or supplier poached a customer and hired them. We've heard that before. That's exactly what the career ecosystem is, because they saw the value that a different perspective will bring to their organization. So when you think about that, what knowledge do you have that is going to be valuable to another organization within your ecosystem, right? Now, if you are saying, well, my whole industry just has been reduced, and so I don't know if my ecosystem exists. Okay, well, let's take a look at that. If you're in the federal sector, let's move into private sector. What growing industries are related to your career ecosystem? So if you were working with a government contractor, if you're working with a government contractor, they may also have other customers that did very similarly with roles that are similar to what you did. Tap into that. And then find, if your industries have been reduced, look at your industry as a whole and try to figure out, is there an area where it's more insulated? Maybe there is a company or a vendor or supplier that not only serve the federal government, but also serve the private sector. Research that. What trends are emerging in your industry? Because trends also may create job roles, or at least shape job roles of the future. Just like AI. 10 years ago, nobody was an AI engineer. Nobody was writing prompts for AI. But today, it's a very much in-demand sector, right? So where is your industry headed? Because these industries may have been reduced, but if they're not going away, they're going to continue. But where is it going? Get ahead of the trends. Research that. And then this is the perfect opportunity too to evaluate your skills. Because if you are looking at pivoting or shifting, there's going to be new information, new knowledge you're going to need, and possibly new skills and maybe new classes and certifications. So research that as well. It may be a formal official certification that you might need that you can get, or online courses, local workshops that your industry may be offering. And of course, you can also look at the free online courses, or for a fee, Coursera, Khan Academy. Those things exist out there. And then if you are at a point where you've looked at all the opportunities in your career ecosystem and there really is nothing, assess the knowledge that you have and see if this is something that you can transfer to consulting work, to contract work. And then there's also people who move into teaching, right? When they're tired of their industries or there are longer opportunities for them in their industry, some of them will turn to teaching the K through 12. And depending on your particular state, there are certain requirements and certain alternative routes to getting your teaching credentials. So if that is an option that you want to pursue, I would research the requirements at your state Department of Education, okay? And then we already talked about exploring adjacent industries. Those are the industries that are outside of your career ecosystem. For example, if you are in hospitality, of course, you're looking at tourism, right? But then there's also hotels. And then within the hotels, there are suppliers and vendors that provide that. Okay, so start with your career ecosystem and start expanding on figuring out other industries that support your industry, because there are supplies, there are vendors, there are services that are necessary. Okay. All right. Let's talk about industries and companies that value your skills and knowledge and talents. Let's dig a little deeper into your career ecosystem, right? We talked about your direct customers. If you were providing a service or product, your customer is part of your ecosystem. And your product is just one of the products or services that they purchase. So tap into customers to see if there are other areas that they have openings in, okay? Because now you're not just looking at the same product or service. Now you are going to be leaning into your network and learning about what other opportunities exist within their company or their sector. vendor suppliers, and the entire supply chain. Okay, we talked the entire supply chain. Follow your products. If you don't know your ecosystem, follow your products. Once your organization is done with the product, where does it go? Who does it send to? Who uses it? That is how you identify your ecosystem, right? We talked about regulatory agencies. If it is a regulated industry like banking, that regulatory agencies are going to be part of your ecosystem. State level, if there is regulation, state level and county level may be involved. Look into those as well, right? And of course, the consumer market. If it's a product or a service, there's consumers who use it, who buy it, who pay for it, okay? And so now that we've identified what your career ecosystem is, you're probably asking questions, okay, how do I figure mine out? Well, let's ask you a few questions. Who did you interact with the most while you were in that role? Those people are in your ecosystem, okay? Then figure out, how is the economy in your region? Is there viability for you to stay in your industry, within your sector? And the reason I ask that is, this is a little bit different. This is what I have a student. It wasn't about a layoff, but it was about understanding what the economy is in your region. Many years ago, I had a student who wanted to be part of marine biology. And I don't recall the role that he wanted, but he lived in the Midwest, and I believe it was Nebraska. If you're going to be looking for a job in marine biology, there's not going to be very many opportunities for you in the Midwest, because you really need to be on the coast, one of the two coasts. But he was very realistic that he could not move for the next 2 years, but he wanted to pursue this. So he knew that he was restricted to rivers, ponds, and lakes and creeks, and trying to identify other organizations that deal with marine biology or anything that has to do with waterways or fisheries. So I'm saying the same thing to you. Figure out what the economy is in your region, because if you can't get back into your current industry or existing industry, where else? What is happening in your region? Because whatever the industry is and whatever companies are there, if you are going to live there and need a job, you're going to have to find your place in those spaces. So first, figuring out, before you start your job search, figure out who are the employers in that area, okay? And then so once you figure out the economy, what are the key industries? So like if you are looking for tourism, right? You would likely need to seek out areas where there is strong tourism, or if you are in an area where tourism is not big, try to figure out what that is. And sometimes you have to figure out a way to think differently, change your perspective. And I have another story about a student where this, again, many years ago, she was an environmentalist and she wanted to work in the parks and recreation sector. And there weren't any openings. And so when I spoke with her, her goal, she wanted to work with wildlife. And so when we spoke, I challenged her to change her perspective. And I believe she was in a place like Montana, Idaho, somewhere. And I said, you have tourism there, right? And she said, yes, we've got hunters. Okay, just engage with me here a little bit. Now, hunting is a business. It is an industry, and it's very big in your area. Usually it's deer hunting, it's wildlife. So even though hunting is the industry there, they still have to follow humane practices. There's regulations that must be, they must abide by. So those tourism companies likely need to hire somebody who understands humane practices for animals. Try there. And she found a role doing that. Now, it kind of went against what she had in mind, but in her role was to make sure that whatever was happening, traps or I'm not a hunter, so I don't know all the steps, but her role was to make sure the practice was humane. She was able to identify a role that made sense for her skills and knowledge, and even her beliefs, even though she was on the other side. So thinking out of the box is important. Okay. I'm saying the same thing for you. Figure out, if you are looking at your industry in one direction, try to flip it. What else can you see? Perspective is very important. Okay. All right. Once you figure out those industries, figure out where will your talents and skills be valued. Because your role is likely not very, it's not unique. There's only one of you. If it's an organization, there's likely similar roles with other organizations who produce the same types of products or services. So keep that in mind. All right. So once you know the industry, the economy, you got to figure out who the main companies are in that region, and you can easily use AI to do this. What are the main industries in Georgia? Who are the main companies and key employers in these industries? And then you just identify the industry that you are in or closest to. And there's your list and structure for your job search. Okay. All right, so adjusting your personal brand. Now that you've kind of found a new path, okay, so how do we get everybody to recognize you in this new path? Well, we need to adjust your personal brand. And we talked a little bit about this before. We need to research that new position and what's required. And then you have to make sure that your new resume reflects that. And again, you're not being anything different. You are taking what you already know and finding a position that values the same skills and knowledge and experiences that you have. So what you're doing is just you're rewriting your resume, you're tailoring it to that particular job posting that you find. So using the job posting as your guide and restructuring your resume is key. Identify all the competencies and experiences and qualifications the employer has posted on that job posting. Make sure that you speak to those requirements and that your matching skills and experience are showcased on your resume. Okay. If you are an APUS or if you're a student or alumni of APUS, feel free to reach out to Career Services. Okay. And for those that are not part of our community, you can use AI, and there are other free online resources that you can just search on Google. Okay. One that comes to mind is Job Scan. That's job and then scan. We can drop Job Scan. Just look for it. Job Scan. I'm sorry, because we are not affiliated with these organizations. I'm a little hesitant to providing more information on them because I don't know what the latest is and what's happening with those services if they're still free. But Google free resume platforms, and you should be able to find them. Okay. Developing an elevator pitch if you are networking. Or let's go back, using accomplishments, your resume, right? And then you're then positioning yourself for this new role, and then keeping up with trending news and industry updates will start you on your way to being part of that new sector or industry. And then you need to develop an elevator pitch if you are meeting industry professionals and interviews. And your elevator pitch is a very short introduction of yourself, your background, your knowledge, and what you are seeking. And again, if you are a student or alum, feel free to reach out to Career Services. We can help you with that. And for those who are not, AI is a great tool to help you develop your elevator pitch. And AI, ChatGPT, it's open source. You can just dump all your information on there, your quality, your expertise, your qualifications, and then literally just dump all that information in, type it in, and then ask it to create an elevator pitch for you. Okay. All right. Fast tracking your job search journey. Okay. We talked about identifying your network and structuring your career ecosystem, but now what? Okay. So again, let's go back to what we said earlier about this is your job, right? Your job is now finding a new job. That means you have to show up every day, every week. And that means you have to do the work. And again, that if on days that you don't feel like working, you can do the easy lifts like being on LinkedIn and being active and sending out notes and messages to existing network. Okay. So making sure that you track your applications. I can't tell you how many times I've had students tell me, I've applied to so many places and now I have an interview for this one company and I don't really remember what I sent them. Create a tracker. And the easiest I can think of is creating a specific folder for each position that you applied for. That means a copy of the job posting you've applied to, if the resume that you have sent, cover letter, and any other information that you have used to apply for that position. Because if you think about it, in an interview, everything the employer or the interviewer knows about you and will ask you about will come from the information that you have submitted. And if you don't know what that is, it'll come across that you're not prepared. So make sure that you create a tracking system. Even if your resume is exactly the same for two jobs, make sure you still keep a copy in a folder for that particular company. Okay, all notes should go into that has anything to do with company A that you applied for should be in that folder. And one thing is when you are prepared, your self-confidence does come across. So that's another way for you to keep your self-confidence up. Okay, and then we talked applications, right? Be strategic about applying for a job, because one thing I want to toss out there is we all look at job boards, right? And it's easy to apply, click here, click there, and then you're done. Massive or mass applications is not the best way, because when you think about it, you're applying to an algorithm. Companies hire job boards to source highly qualified applicants. And so how they do that with AI is through algorithms. So it's forward applicants to me when they meet 85% of what I'm asking for. So there is no room for anyone who doesn't meet that. So rather than applying through job boards, I challenge you to go directly to the company website and visit the careers pages and find the position that you want to apply for and apply through their direct website, because likely you will be creating a profile where you can come in and check your status, or at the very least, they will send you an email saying it's received, and at least you are aware that your application is going to be seen or be received by the hiring team and not a third-party algorithm that screened you out. So for those of you who've said, I've applied to 50 jobs and got nothing, how many of those were through the job boards where it was easy apply? Okay, something to keep in mind. All right, so let's talk about interviews, okay? Preparing for interviews. And when I say preparing for an interview, there's a couple of steps, right? When you're going to an interview, what's happening is the company is going to want to know about you and what you know about their organization. Why are you fit? Why should we choose you? So your job is to know the answers to the questions that are going to be coming at you, right? And how you do that is you prepare. There are common questions that you know are going to be asked in interviews. Every other interview asks that, like, tell me about yourself, right? What's your biggest weakness, or why do you want this job? Those are common questions that we should not be surprised that's being asked. We should prepare for them, right? And here's a little tip. these questions, if you reframe them from the perspective of the employer, tell me about yourself. Think of it as, what is it about you that makes you a fit for this position, and why should we hire you? Right? Then you know the information that you need to give them is the answer to that. Why are you a fit? What is it about your background or your career history that supports your qualifications to be hired? Right? So understanding the interview questions are key. We have an open career services YouTube channel where you can find some of the resources that we made available to the public. You can find interview help there. And then for APUS, a student and alumni, you can access our career resources through your eCampus, accessing it in CareerLink, okay? And then negotiating competently and understanding the market rates. Now, this, depending on your industry and depending on where you're coming from, we're probably just going to be happy that we have a job offer, right? But we also want to make sure that the salary that's being offered to us is realistic. And what I mean by realistic is not just realistic for your needs, but realistic for the current market. So if you are looking to negotiate, figure out how selective they are and how it is supply and demand. If there are other people out there who can do your job and are willing to take that salary, that may be the going salary. So research your market, research your sector, and research your salary requirements. And again, AI can help you with all of this. When I say research, this is with AI, it's so much easier to do now. 2 years ago, this would have taken hours. But with AI that scours the internet for you, it will just take minutes. So there really is no excuse to not do research and be prepared. You have to know what's happening with that, who the company is, what's happening, what industry are they in, who's their competition, how much of the market share do they have, what are their products, and what's trending in the industry. Those are basic information that you can research using AI. And so there really is no excuse to attend an interview unprepared. Okay? And as far as common interview questions, you can find these on AI as well. And of course, again, for those students have access to CareerLink, there you can find examples there as well. Okay? All right, so I know I've tossed a lot out there for you, right? Understanding your network, your ecosystem, how to handle your job search, and how do we balance all of this? It's all very overwhelming. You got to take care of yourself. If you've all heard it before, if you aren't taking care of yourself, how can you take care of others? How can you take care of others around you that need you? So we have to stay positive, have to keep our mind sharp, okay? Do what you normally do with your exercise, your meditation, or hobbies. Sometimes your hobbies, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, hobbies will not only keep you active, engaged, but if your hobby is related to your industry and there's skills that are tied together, that's keeping you sharp, okay? We talked about your support system, right? That's your colleagues. If your whole department was let go, staying in touch with them, because your connection not only is just support and camaraderie, but the person that had been across the department didn't have the same exact job as you, because everybody is job hunting. So maybe Joe comes across a job that's not a fit for him, but it may be a fit for you. You want him to be able to reach out to you and say, hey, I found this job. It's not a fit for me, but you might be interested. So having that active circle of people job searching and exchanging information is golden, okay? So lean into your support system. And then, of course, for those who need a little bit of extra, students and alumni, we have the chaplain and our mental health resources. And if you're outside of our community, reach out to your church or community resources. They are out there, either through your county or your town, your city. or even online. They may be able to find an online support group. Okay. All right. All right. Now this is specific to our students and alumni community. Okay. Undergraduates and graduate students, and even those who've recently graduated, have 1-year access to LifeRamp that we have licensed for you. This is an extension of coaching that Career Services doesn't extend out to. Career Services is here to help you with your career-related goals, getting you on track, but sometimes there are gaps that keep you from, that's between Career Services and life. And sometimes it's just maintaining a well-balanced mental health. LifeRamp can help you there. And there's a link. So you'll have to access it through your eCampus using your eCampus email so that they can recognize you as a member of our APUS family. Okay. All right. So we talked about how to value your, or how valuable your skills are. So let's take a look at potential jobs that you can do while you wait. Freelancing and gig work. If your role can be transferred into coaching or consulting, that may be a possibility for you, right? If you're a teacher, possibly tutoring then, right? If you are a coach of some sort, but like a sports coach, maybe consulting work. So look at where gig works, freelancing works. Now, again, there's people, this may be a side job for you, but these are industries. People have made careers and money as freelancers and doing gig work. Okay. So identifying marketable skills for your short-term work. And then there's platforms for freelancing and remote gigs. There's Fiverr. That's the only one that comes to mind, but I know there's others, but research them, look for them online, and see if this is something that might make sense for you for the time being. Okay, you can monetize a hobby or your passion, right? For those, we've seen this all over social media, those who are into makeup, they are monetizing that hobby. If you have, if it's time to clean the garage, because you have all this free time, you may be able to sell some of the products that you no longer need. So keeping your eyes open for possibilities of where you can monetize your existing environment or structure. Okay. All right, so let's review reminders. All right, so we talked about examining your ecosystem to identify your talents and the values and where else it can be applied to. Okay. Pivoting versus starting over. If your industry is still intact in many ways, you're just pivoting for a new role. However, if it's completely collapsed, but I don't think there's industries that completely collapse, but if you need to restart over, again, you lean into the skills and experience that you have and your career ecosystem, except if you don't want to stay in that industry, you're now looking at the extended components of your ecosystem. Okay. Staying engaged to maintain and build up your self-confidence, your hobbies, your connections, your online presence on LinkedIn, very, very important. And this is a way for you to keep all the channels of opportunities open. Right? And then supporting others, because supporting others means others will support you. Giving others information that you find means they will do the same for you. If you see a job that's not for you, post it on LinkedIn because somebody is looking for that job. And I do that often. If I see one of my colleagues who is posting a job that they're hiring for, I will post it because I know maybe someone out there is looking for the specific job. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, please drop them in to the chat. Otherwise, this concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. Again, many of the resources we talked about are restricted to our APUS community. However, if you are not part of our APUS community, there are many online resources that you can search for, especially with the help of AI. It is not as hard as before. It's just working smart and trying to figure out. And again, be kind to yourself. Practice self-care. There are going to be days where you just don't feel like doing any work. And again, a reminder, this is your job now, to find a new job. This is your job. But there are days, I know, that we don't feel like working. Allow yourself some time off. Maybe it's the afternoon off, maybe it's the morning off, right? But don't fall into a rut where you're giving yourself a week off, because it is harder to get back up when you haven't been in touch or engaged with your network, okay? Thank you so much. Again, for those who are a part of the APUS community, reach out to career services at apus.edu. And if you need resume help at apus.edu. You can access all of this through your eCampus using your My Campus email. Thanks so much. Good luck to you, and we'll see you in the next one.